15. It's a tough age, especially when you have to undergo some incredibly traumatic event like the loss of your best friend in order to awaken your Mangekyo Sharingan, or something more mundane and common, like accidentally joining a Minecraft YouTuber's Discord. Now, fortunately, even though the Uchiha clan was once vast and powerful and filled with tons of Sharingan users, very few of them ever had to undergo the level of stress and traumatic experiences that awaken a Mangekyo Sharingan. However, those who did were able to gain access to one of the most powerful dojutsu in the entire world. And while there was once a time in the Uchiha clan where multiple Mangekyo Sharingan users existed simultaneously, for the majority of the clan's existence, there's rarely been more than 2 or 3 users living at the same time. And therefore, you could look at the current status of the Uchiha clan kind of as a golden era, as 100% of the surviving Sharingan-wielding Uchiha members have access to at least the Mangekyo Sharingan. The bad news in that statistic is, well, there's only 2 of them. But amongst those 2 Mangekyo Sharingan users, Sarada and Sasuke, who's stronger? Who has access to greater abilities? Who has better feats? Who wins in a fight? The 15-year-old Sarada or her father? Now, I know this question seems absolutely ridiculous. I mean, what are we talking about here? Sasuke is unequivocally the strongest Uchiha of all time. Stronger than Madara, stronger than Obito, maybe stronger than Indra. Sasuke, at the peak of his power, existed at the very pinnacle of what an Uchiha could accomplish in terms of strength. The biggest Susanoo, access to the Rinnegan. There was even a time that he was a pseudo 10-tails Jinchuriki, and as the only Uchiha who ever went into battle against the Otsutsuki and came out alive, well, yeah, the crown of strongest Uchiha of all time should very comfortably rest on his head. However, unfortunately, the thing about passing on your incredibly talented genes to the next generation is that eventually they're going to surpass you. And in the case of Sarada, that might have already happened. But listen, I can feel some of you pulling away because, Nick, you don't like Sasuke, but you do like Sarada, so you have a bias here. So what we're going to do today is compare the strength of Sarada and Sasuke, both with just their MSs. 15-year-old Sarada and 15-year-old Sasuke. And if, and only if, Sarada appears as though she would win that fight, we'll compare Sarada's current strength in Two Blue Vortex Chapter 27 to the strength of adult Sasuke. Now, I haven't done the research yet, so I actually don't know how this video's gonna go. So I'm gonna pause recording here, do about an hour or 2 of research, and then finish this up. But before we kick off this father-daughter battle, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And if you're looking for one additional NC Hammer 23 video every single week, we are on to episode 45 of Naruto in our Naruto reaction series. We are cooking. Before we get into all that, today I want to talk to you about a brand new sponsor to the page, Aura. See, Aura understands that even though you may feel as though your data is secure, that most likely it's not. See, unfortunately, in today's internet-attached age, there's people out there called data brokers, and they get that name for a reason. They got a lot more of your information than even you could begin to realize. Ever posted about where you live, who you're related to, who your friends are, where you work? Yeah, they probably know that. In fact, this redacted report that came from real-life data brokers is a really good visual example for you to understand the kind of information that these people are able to glean from what you may deem as a relatively private life. And as somebody living a very unprivate life, as it is literally my job for you to look at me, you best believe working with Aura is one of the best things I've ever done for myself. See, I personally don't like the fact that these data brokers are selling my information, destroying my privacy, and making money off me without me seeing a red cent. But that's where Aura wants to help me and you fight back, so we can stalk these spammers, scammers, and stalkers once and for all. But how does Aura do this? Well, they protect your identity first and foremost by identifying the data brokers that are selling your information. And then they not only automatically remove you from all those websites, but also ensure that you will never be put back on those websites in the future. And while there is a fair amount of services out there that offer this service, none of them give you nearly as many services, all at the same price. See, Aura not only sends you notifications when your information is found on the dark web, but they also give you live time fraud alerts for both your credit lines and your banking accounts. They have 24/7 monitoring that allows for your identity to feel secure and safe at all hours of the day. They offer a secure VPN, antivirus, and password manager. They have a US-based customer support system, and if anything does go wrong, Aura has a $5 million identity theft insurance protection plan, with US fraud experts ready to help 24/7. So what are you waiting for? Try Aura for free for 14 days at aura.com/NCHammer. In just those 2 weeks, Aura will get to work scrubbing all of your personal information off of all those sketchy data broker websites. I'm not leaving myself vulnerable, and you shouldn't either. All right, I'm back. So before we get into the battle part of this video, we need to establish exactly exactly how strong our two combatants are. So first, let's hop into the way back machine and talk about Sasuke with only access to his Mangekyo Sharingan. Now, this is a kind of weird part of Sasuke's story. Sasuke very obviously fights against Itachi without access to his Mangekyo Sharingan, because it is the death of Itachi that gives Sasuke access to his MS. So everything up until around episode 130-ish of Naruto Shippuden, Sasuke only has access to the 3 Tomei Sharingan. However, by the time that the 4th Great Shinobi World War rolls around, Sasuke decides to take up Obito on his offer of having Itachi's eyes transplanted into his own, giving him access to the EMS. Now, this is mostly because everything that happens during the 5 Kage Summit and all the fighting that Sasuke has to do leaves him almost blind pretty much immediately after overusing his MS abilities. And thus, it's not until after Sasuke enacts his revenge on Danzo that Sasuke actually gets access to the EMS. But how exactly strong was 5 Kage Summit Sasuke? Obviously strong enough to believe that he could take on all 5 Kage somewhat simultaneously. And honestly, he kind of had the right to feel that way. Shippuden Sasuke was a problem. See, pretty much one of the first things that we see in Shippuden is Team 7 running back into Sasuke. And Sasuke is about to wipe Team 7 off the map by using Kirin before Orochimaru stops him, because the plot needs to keep going. But simply having access to Kirin is kind of insane from Sasuke. See, because in order to be able to create Kirin, that is to say to pull the lightning out of the thundercloud, if there are no thunderclouds, Sasuke needs to make them. That sounds like a somewhat casual feat, but do you know how much power is required to literally change the weather? Now, Sasuke's able to do this either with his Amaterasu or his giant fireball jutsu, but the fact that Sasuke is able to make a high pressure area meet a low pressure area, creating a thundercloud, implies that he's operating at the beginning of Shippuden at like large mountain level already. And this is confirmed by the fact that he casually overpowers Sai when the two of them meet, is able to defeat and kill Orochimaru, as injured as they were, by not only stabbing them using a Chidori Sharp Spear, but also overpowering their attempt to take over his body using his Sharingan base Genjutsu. And even though Itachi wasn't technically fighting Sasuke to win, Sasuke did almost kill Itachi with a Kirin that Itachi had to block by covering himself in his incredibly powerful Susanoo. Now, like we've established a million times before, this was not only a not full trying Itachi, but also a not full strength Itachi. He was basically at the brink of his death, and the only reason he was fighting Sasuke was to exhaust Sasuke to the point that Orochimaru would try to take over his body. But still, this was an iteration of Itachi that after this fight was strong enough to be able to wipe out the strongest version of Orochimaru. And while Itachi was able to block this Kirin that Sasuke pulled down at him, it obliterated the mountain they were fighting on. So even before Sasuke had access to his Mangekyo Sharingan, he was somewhere between large mountain and island level. Now, when he does gain access to his Mangekyo Sharingan, he goes on a bit of a tear. He flies off to the Hidden Cloud Village with now Taka to try and take on Killer Bee, and while he does get killed twice over the course of this fight, he does force Killer Bee into retreating by covering him in Amaterasu. He's also able to block sword swings from Killer Bee, which implies a certain level of durability and strength. Now, Killer Bee is literally writing rap lyrics this entire time, and it's the entirety of Taka fighting against him, not just Sasuke, but still, he at least somewhat belonged in a battle against Killer Bee, who, mind you, using his Jinchuriki transformation, was able to literally shove a tailed beast ball back down the throat of the Ten Tails. By far and away, the most impressive thing that Mangekyo Sharingan Sasuke ever did was everything surrounding the 5 Kage Summit, the battle against Danzo after it very much included. See, over the course of this battle, by far and away, the most actually impressive thing that Sasuke pulls off is battling against the 4th Raikage, as his battles against pretty much everybody else don't exactly pan out the way that he would have planned. I mean, Mei melts Susanoo, Onoki literally would have turned him into dust if not for Obito, and he doesn't really get the rematch against Gaara that he wanted. And thus, the only person that Sasuke really had any amount of time to actually fight against was the 4th Raikage. And Sasuke does a pretty good job here. I mean, not only is Sasuke able to bait into chopping his Amaterasu covered Susanoo ribcage, causing to have to cut off his right arm, or left, I honestly don't remember which, but also over the course of this fight, before Sasuke makes the 4th Raikage cut off one of his own arms, Sasuke is able to, using his Chidori, punch through the 4th Raikage's lightning cloak, his V1 lightning cloak, mind you, the strongest iteration of his lightning cloak, and land and a strike into his chest, drawing blood from him. Now, this means that Sasuke can go toe-to-toe against the 4th Raikage when he's using the highest level of his defensive jutsu, and the fact that he's able to draw blood from him implies that his AP is equal to or higher than the 4th Raikage's durability. But how strong is the 4th Raikage? Well, strong. Really strong, actually. See, obviously, we saw that A battled against Madara during the 4th Great Shinobi World War, and while being enhanced by Inoki, who was using lightweight boulder jutsu on him, A was able to apply pressure to Madara, going so far as actually to destroy some of his Susanoo clad in wood clones. Now, as to how much of that credit we can give A versus Inoki, we can't really say. However, A's strength has been described to us multiple times. Karin told us that his chakra is on par with that of a tailed beast, and Killer B told us that at his full power, A was capable of killing KCM Naruto. Now, it's KCM-1 Naruto, but still. KCM-1 Naruto went toe-to-toe with the likes of Edo Nagato and White Mask Obito. So A's strength, and mind you, this is when he had both hands, is anticipated to be somewhere between island and small country level. So Sasuke being able to draw blood from him and cause him to cut off one of his own arms means that Sasuke, with just his MS during the 5 Kage Summit, is somewhere in the region of small country level, which is like kind of confirmed through his battle against Danzo, but Danzo doesn't necessarily have feats against anybody else, so we can't really know exactly how strong Danzo is. But immediately following killing Danzo like 17 times, Sasuke still proved a legitimate threat to the entirety of Team 7, that being people like MS Kakashi and Sage Mode Naruto. So it's safe to assume that MS Sasuke's AP is somewhere in the region of small country level. In terms of speed, MS Sasuke was also a problem. See, not only was Susanoo Arrow able to speed blitz people like Danzo and Kakashi, other Sharingan users, but at the very beginning of the 5 Kage Summit battle, Sasuke was able to react to a sword stroke from Mifune. Mifune, the head of the samurai, who was known to be able to battle against Hanzo the Salamander and other notoriously strong shinobi because of his ridiculously fast EI jutsu. See, Mifune's sword strokes are said to be so fast that they don't give a shinobi the chance to do hand signs, and therefore if Sasuke is able to react to the sword stroke from Mifune, which is specifically designed to cut down shinobi before they get the chance to use their jutsu, Sasuke's speed in this form should be somewhere in the region of relativistic plus to maybe even FTL. So he's very strong and he's very fast, and he has 2 more upgrades to go after this. But how strong is Sarada right now in 2 Blue Vortex? Well, even before we get the 2 Blue Vortex and the awakening of Sarada's MS, Sarada had some wildly impressive feats, like going toe-to-toe in the Chunin exams against a butterfly mode Chocho, effortlessly sparring with and parrying against Boruto in chapter 18, after Boruto had already undergone his versus Momoshiki arc and defeated Momoshiki, gaining access to the karma marking and possibly the Jogan. But really, when it comes down to it, the most impressive thing that Sarada ever pulled off in part 1 of Boruto was using her Chidori in combination with her 3 Tomei Sharingan to destroy the core of Boro, an inner of Kara, and she was able to do this while not being practiced with the Chidori. This is literally the first time we ever see her use it. However, she's still able to use it with such incredible amounts of speed that Boro isn't able to weave the hand signs he needs to do to move his core, and thus Sarada is able to snag it out of his body and destroy it. Now, as an inner of Kara, it stands to reason that Boro is substantially stronger than Ao, who was an outer of Kara, and it took the combined forces of Konohamaru, Mitsuki, Sarada, Boruto, and Katsuki wearing a ridiculous shinobi-wear mech suit that was able to absorb ninjutsu using 2 gigantic black balls to defeat Ao. And this idea that Boro was stronger than Ao makes a fair amount of sense when you consider the fact that a stronger version of Team 7 that included Kawaki, who at this point in time absolutely had access not only to the shinobi-wear in his body but also his karma marking, absolutely struggled against Boro to the point where really the only reason they were able to defeat him was because Momoshiki took over Boruto's body, and thus Boro, in comparison to Ao, has been scaled somewhere in the region of island to country level. And yet Sarada in part 1 was able to inflict what should have been a fatal wound to him, ripping his core out of his body. And thus with this Chidori in part 1 of Boruto, before Sarada even gets her MS, she has a feat that is somewhere in the region of island level to country level, with what's scaled as a sub-relativistic feat of blitzing Boro before he was able to do his hand signs to move his core. But okay, that's still weaker than where we had MS Sasuke. She's slower, we're kind of unsure on her AP, so let's talk about Sarada in part 2 of Boruto, after she awakens her MS in chapter 79 of part 1 of Boruto. Basically, Sarada in 2 Blue Vortex is involved in 3 important fights. In chronological order, that's her battle against Chidori, her battle against Ryu, and her battle, I guess you could call it, against Daemon. And for all intents and purposes, she wins, like, 2 out of 3 of these. Now, mind you, in the first battle against Hidari, she was not using her Monkey-ko Sharingan. She was using it in her battle against Ryu, and she tried to use it in her battle against Daemon, but didn't really have the time. But what do these 3 fights that Sarada has in part 2 of Boruto tell us about her current strength? Now, let's go over these fights chronologically. Yeah, I kind of lied earlier when I said that Sarada won 2-ish of these fights. See, because here's the thing. Sarada doesn't really win in the battle against Hidari. I mean, she literally gets knocked out by his Chidori. And like, this fight can be as highballed or lowballed as you really want. See, when it boils down to it, Sumire, Sarada, and Konohama are battling it out with Hidari in Konoha. And Hidari is trying to figure out why he wants to consume Sarada. He's also trying to figure out why Sarada seems to know him and what this Chidori does. It's for all intents and purposes kind of Hidari's first real fight. However, that doesn't mean that he does not know how to use his Rinnegan pretty much perfectly, as he's able to fire his claw markings and use them at as high a level as we've really seen anyone use them. However, fortunately for Sarada, she's fast, like really fast. And therefore, when Hidari pops out behind her with his hand covered in lightning release and tries to strike her, Sarada's able to weave, apply her own Chidori, and slash through Hidari's midsection. Now, a couple of chapters later, because we focus on Juro versus Himawari for a little bit there, we see smoke rising from Hidari's midsection. And Sarada says to him, that was a fatal wound. It must hurt. But all but immediately, Hidari heals himself from it. Now, this right here is that moment where we could either highball what Sarada just accomplished or lowball it. See, because, well, yes, Sarada was able to apply what she believed was a fatal wound to Hidari. It wasn't, like, at all. As until Boruto shows up on the scene and hits Hidari with a Rasengan Uzuhiko, that an actually possibly fatal wound is applied to Hidari. But Nick, she was able to surpass his durability and injure him. And yes, you're right, she was. So it doesn't necessarily matter as to whether or not the wound itself was actually fatal, because if I was able to cut Madara in half, but he was able to regenerate his legs, that wouldn't mean my AP was any lower. It would just mean that his health regeneration was higher. So Sarada being able to injure Hidari in a technically non-fatal way is very similar to how we talked about Sasuke being able to injure the 4th Raikage in a non-fatal way. Just because the attack didn't kill him doesn't mean that Sarada wouldn't be able to kill him if she hypothetically hit him in the right spot. But Nick, the feat's not all that impressive when you consider the fact that it's established that Hidari's not able to use the Chidori because he only has the Rinnegan and not the Sharingan. And we all know that Chidori without the Sharingan leaves you massively open to counterattacks. And once again, you are right. It has been established 1,000,000 times in the past that you should not use the Chidori without the Sharingan, or like maybe the Byakugan. But apparently the Rinnegan doesn't grant enough extrasensory perception, at least to the Shinju, that it's able to counteract the tunnel visioning of the Chidori. And therefore, yes, technically Hidari was more prone to a counterattack when he tried to use the Chidori against Sarada. However, he also didn't try to use the Chidori in a traditional kind of way. See, the problem with the Chidori is it is a straight line attack, usually used from some distance away. But that's not how Hidari used it. Hidari popped out of a claw mark behind Sarada and tried to strike her from her blind spot. Very similarly to how Sasuke uses heavenly hand power to pop behind people and down spike them with the Chidori. And yet Sarada still, with just her 3-Tome Sharingan, was able to dodge this blind spot attack and launch a counterattack onto an opponent that, mind you, was able to dodge Daikokuten rods from Kawaki and block his attack. Now, dodging point-blank Daikokuten rods is something that even 6-Tome Rinnegan Sasuke could not do. And while we know that Kawaki had limiters placed on his offensive output at that moment by Amado, his cover marking was still fully expressed in that moment. He had access to all of the power, all of the battle experience, and all of the abilities of Ishiki. Now, was his power 1-to-1 equal with Ishiki's? Maybe? Probably not. But still, Sasuke with his EMS and 6-Tome Rinnegan wasn't able to dodge Daikokuten rods from Jigen. The fact that Hidari was able to dodge them from Kawaki seems to imply a level of speed that Sasuke may have never had access to. And yet Sarada was able to dodge an attack from him and launch what should have been a fatal counterattack, implying pretty easily that just with her 3-Tome Sharingan, she has FTL plus speeds. And even though the blow that she inflicted on Hidari wasn't technically lethal, the fact that she was able to impart on Hidari what she believed was a fatal wound implies that her AP is at least equal to Hidari's durability. And Hidari has time and time again been stated to be vastly superior to Code in strength. As when the Shinju were first introduced and Boruto was battling against all of them simultaneously, while Ada was watching the battle and saw Code retreat, she talked about how all of the Shinju were already on a different level than Code. who, mind you, at this current moment in time does not have limiters placed on his power, and those very same limiters were specifically placed on him by Jigen because Jigen was afraid that without those limiters, he would be stronger than him. The same Jigen who was able to absolutely trounce peak-powered Naruto and Sasuke simultaneously. So if Code, who should be at least equal in power to Jigen, is completely outclassed by all of the Shinju in power, which is proven when Code is caught spying on the Shinju and yoinked out of the black box by Ryu, who should for all intents and purposes be one of the weakest Shinju, then Hidari should be very comfortably stronger than Jigen. But if Jigen was able to battle against two Planet Busters simultaneously and only have them hit him once, then that means that Hidari is at least a planet level threat. You tracking where I'm going here? And therefore, if Hidari is at least a planet level threat, then Sarada, using her 3-Tomei Sharingan, who was able to inflict what should have been a fatal wound on him, is also a planet level threat. And considering the fact that she was able to dodge an attack from somebody who was able to dodge Daikoku 10 rods, something that only Baryon mode Naruto could do, means that her speed is also very comfortably in the FTL plus area. Unfortunately for Sasuke, I guess, this only gets worse when you take her battle against Ryu into consideration. Because when Sarada does finally start using her Mangekyo Sharingan for the first ever time in only one of its abilities, mind you, Ohirame, she's able to very easily defeat Ryu. Now, mind you, Ryu, who should undoubtedly be stronger than Matsuri, who's able to defeat the combined forces of Araya, Yodo, Gaara, and Shinki all simultaneously. Gaara's ability to go toe-to-toe with the likes of Momoshiki and Kinshiki also makes him a small planet-level threat, mind you, was able to hold on to and restrain a full-power Code. Like, literally, the first thing he did after being spawned into the worlds by either Jura or Matsuri was sense that they were all being watched by Code and use his Iron Sand-like ability to reach into the black box he was spawned on top of and yoink out Code by the neck. And there was literally nothing Code could do. Now, this disparity between Code's power and the power of the Shinju is further highlighted when Code tries to use his claw marks to plunge his hand into the ground to grab Jura by the neck. But Jura, while still leaning against the wall with his hands in his pockets, simply blows Code's hand clean off. Now, once again, this is the same Code who was able to break into Konoha, hold Amino up by the neck, and get his limiters removed. The same Code that was able to go toe-to-toe against the likes of Boruto and Kawaki, both using their karma markings simultaneously in part 1 of Boruto. The same Code that Shikamaru had doubts about Naruto defeating using just his Sage Mode. The same Code that had limiters placed on him by Jigen in order to ensure that he never surpassed Jigen in strength. And Ryu was immediately established as stronger than him. Sarada blew him up. Literally everything that Ryu did to try to get out of the gravity well that Sarada created failed. And he was crushed under the overwhelming pressure of a black hole created by Sarada, doing as much damage to him as Boruto's Rasengan Uzuhiko did to Hidari, evaporating his entire body and leaving only behind his soul thorn. And if Ryu was massively superior in strength to Code, that means he was at least a planet level threat. And there is no doubt in the fact that Sarada won that fight. So Sarada, with her MS, and her MS alone, only half of the abilities, mind you, at least so far as we currently believe, is a planet buster with FTL plus speeds. So, you know, a lot stronger than her father when he was 15. Like, it's not even close, actually. Sarada is literally hundreds of times faster than MS Sasuke and probably tens to hundreds of times stronger. She trounces him. It's like Naruto versus Konohamaru in that one filler episode. But what if hypothetically you were to place Sarada up against her father at his peak power? Now, in order to answer that question, we'd have to establish what Sasuke's peak power is. Some people would argue that Sasuke's peak power is during the 4th Great Shinobi World War when he had access to all 10-tailed beasts, while others would argue that Sasuke's peak power was when he was an adult, and I would tend to agree with those people. There's an argument to be made for both sides. I mean, obviously, Sasuke only has access to 2 arms in one of those forms, but still, I would argue that Sasuke, as an adult, is stronger than even his Indra's arrow form at the end of the 4th Great Shinobi World War. And this is because when Boruto's story begins, Sasuke is repeatedly described as Naruto's equal in strength. And when I say repeatedly, I mean it's stated in the Boruto databook, Sasuke Retsudan, and Shikamaru Shinden. There's really no reason for us to believe that there is a massive difference in strength between adult Naruto minus Baryon mode and adult Sasuke. And honestly, this is kind of confirmed in all of the important battles that the two of them fight alongside each other. See, pretty much the first thing that we see in Boruto is Sasuke battling against Momoshiki and Kinshiki simultaneously. And while Sasuke does struggle a fair amount in this battle, he basically just talks about about it as a tedious battle to engage with. He's able to perceive, dodge, and launch counterattacks against these two simultaneously. And there's no reason for us to believe that on an individual 1v1 kind of basis that he wouldn't be able to win either of those fights. However, the two of them simultaneously might have been too much for him to take on. Now, this kind of thought process is backed up in the fact that in Sasuke's own light novels, it's established that he, as an adult, would be able to take on a Kaguya-level threat by himself. So as an adult, he's surpassed the power of Kaguya, something he very much did not do in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War. And this level up doesn't even actually take the full 16 or so years of the blank period between Shippuden and Boruto, because even in the last, Sasuke, just using his Chidori, not even his Susanoo, is able to eviscerate a meteor that would have wiped out the entirety of Konoha, which is the ninja world's biggest village. Something that in the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, in the battle against 3 Rinnegan Madara, Sasuke needed his perfect Susanoo to be able to do. And thus, only 2 or 3 years after the conclusion of the Fourth Great Shinobi World War, Sasuke's base Chidori is now equal in strength to his perfect Susanoo. And let's not forget the fact that Naruto and Sasuke were able to basically defeat a fused Momoshiki, who was only brought back into the fight because Katsuki was trying to show off his Shinobi Gauntlet. That's fused Momoshiki, who's consumed the power of a dozen or so planets. And if Momoshiki by himself has destroyed 12 or so planets, well then obviously he's a planet buster. And if Sasuke was able to defeat not only Momoshiki, but also a Momoshiki boosted with the power of Kinshiki, who's also pretty comfortably in that small planet level plus area, well then, yeah, adult Sasuke is very easily in that planet level discussion. Possibly even higher, somewhere in the region of large planet level. And while all of the fights after Momoshiki and Kinshiki don't go so well for Sasuke, it's very clear, even though Sasuke isn't exactly winning in the fight against Karma Jigen, that Jigen is wary of Sasuke, as not only does he dodge and block all of Sasuke's attacks, but he literally has to retreat using his Karma Rift after their first fight. On top of this, after Ishiki was defeated, Momoshiki decided that eliminating Sasuke as a threat was the most important thing he could do. But even after Sasuke was beat to a pulp and exhausted after his fight against Ishiki and lost his Rinnegan Eye when Borishiki surprised him with a kunai to the eye, Momoshiki was still incredibly wary of Sasuke's powers. So yes, Sasuke is very easily planet level plus. And while Sasuke wasn't able to react to the chakra rods of either Jigen or Ishiki, he was able to speed blitz Momoshiki. And thus his speed falls very comfortably into the FTL plus category and is probably even higher than that. So if I had to take adult Sasuke and put him against the current iteration of his daughter, who would win in a fight? I hate to break it to you, but as the feats currently stand, it would probably be Sarada. Sarada is able to dodge an attack from and launch a fatal counterattack against somebody who is able to dodge black chakra rods, something that Sasuke at the peak of his power was unable to do, which would imply in some capacity that Sarada is faster than peak power Sasuke. Not to mention that Sarada was able to defeat somebody in Ryu who was very clearly to be established to be stronger than Code, who without his limiters was said to be stronger than Jigen, who Sasuke didn't stand a chance against. So if you are just looking at the feats, Sarada is, yes, stronger than Sasuke. Now, does that mean technically Sasuke would lose in a fight to his daughter at the peak of his power? No. I don't think so. Yes, if you just want to look at what Sarada's accomplished and therefore compare it to what Sasuke's accomplished, Sarada has technically accomplished more impressive things. I'm sorry if that offends you, I'm not the one writing the story. But if you hypothetically release Sasuke from his Divine Tree prison tomorrow and gave him back maybe his other arm and his 6 Tomei Rinnegan, is there a world in which I see Sarada defeating him in combat? No. Her chakra pool is smaller. She doesn't have EMS. She will slowly but surely go blind by using her Monkey Sharingan, and it'll actually be pretty quick on account of the fact that it is an Amaterasu derivative technique. And Amaterasu is well known to put the most strain on a Monkey Sharingan out of any Monkey Sharingan ability. She has less experience fighting. She hasn't shown any variants of the Chidori. She's not Kenjutsu trained like Sasuke. She doesn't have Rinnegan abilities like the Heavenly Hand Power or the Deva Path. We've never seen her Susanoo. She can't fly. There are literally a million ways that adult Sasuke would be able to defeat Sarada. However, if you turned off the logical side of your brain and just looked at the power scaling feats, well then, yes, Sarada would win, but that's kind of insane. So who wins in a fight between Sasuke and Sarada, both going out for blood at the peak of their powers? Well, it's kind of up to whoever you want to win. There's a legitimate argument to be made for both sides, but if you had to ask me, I'm putting my money on Sasuke. But who do you guys think wins? Let me know in the comments below, and while you're down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Well, if you'll excuse me, it's Friday, and it's Halloween, so I'm probably gonna stay inside, actually.